Welcome everyone to Just Onside. I'm your host Ahmed Badger Baghdadi, and I am joined by a man whose team can't fly any higher, Uwais Ahmed, and a man whose team constantly flirts with relegation, Ayub Patel. How are we doing, gents? We good?
Very well, thank you. Very well, Badge. That was a nice introduction. I see now that Arsenal are continuously winning games, less and less jibes from you. So, no, good stuff. Good stuff. How are we? How are we?
I'm
I'm all
depressed,
good.
but I'll
I'm
tell
concerned
you
about you.
why I'm depressed later on.
Oh, we can guess. We can guess.
Oh, we'll get into that. No problem. Before we continue the video, make sure you like, subscribe, hit that bell for any new videos coming up. And yeah, let's get into it.
Please share. Don't forget to share
Don't
the video.
forget to share, of
Absolutely.
course.
Absolutely.
He's on it today. He's on it. All right, we're getting straight into it, boys. Coming into this
But just to
podcast.
let you know, before you carry on, just to let people know, we've had obviously lots of issues or lots of concerns about my lighting. So just to let you know, I'm out of prison.
He's out of the gulag.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bash, it's all yours.
No, it's all right. Our viewers, actually, I should have introduced you better because our viewers might not recognize you.
Yeah,
I mean, after looking at my face, they'll be thinking, no, get the bad light back on.
Not just that, he's got white on today as well.
There's a reason for it. I thought, well, I'm going to make sure there's plenty of light. So even I've got a white top on as well.
Lovely. How considerate are you?
Very
How
good.
Rightly so.
But yeah, coming into this podcast, we've already had two major news in terms of Premier League football. We've had two sackings, Graham Potter and Brendan Rodgers. Graham Potter being very high profile, given how badly Chelsea's season's gone so far. So I just wanted to fire over to you guys and see what your thoughts are on these decisions made by Leicester and Chelsea, and whether you thought it's the right one and at the right time.
Well, I think, I think you should start with this because I remember when Graham Potter got the Chelsea job, and I know we had a few conversations at the time, or at least when he was rumored to get the job. I think we had the conversation just before he was appointed. So maybe you can lead off on this one, Badge.
Yeah, for sure. Graham Potter, like you said before we started this podcast or anything, when he was getting rumored for the job, I had huge concerns about that appointment because I do think he's a very good coach. The work he did at Brighton was superb in terms of how they were playing football, the recruitment, everything is brilliant. Chelsea, we all know, is a club that doesn't tend to give managers time. He's more a project manager than he is short-term titles. So I always thought he wasn't a good fit. I was a little gutted when he did end up going there, as obviously they're rival to us, me being a United fan, and just more so how they treat their managers. And I know there's new ownership, and they said they were going to do things differently to what Roman was doing. But at a club like Chelsea, if you are not winning titles, if you're not up in the mix, the future just isn't going to last long for you as a manager. And that was my gripe with Graham Potter going there. It wasn't a good fit, basically. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the matter. And I find this quite inevitable, to be honest. Even the signings they've provided him with, they were playing football manager at times. They were just signing whoever they thought was hot at the time without any. It didn't seem like there was any strategy in place. And then it was up to him to make all these pieces fit, which was a big task in itself, especially for the price tag that some of the players are coming in at. But yeah, I unfortunately kind of saw it coming. I hope he does get another relatively big job because I do think he is a good manager, but he may need to work his way up to the next one. But I always felt it wasn't a good fit.
Yeah, and not much I can disagree with that, and I do echo that sentiment. What's really interesting is with the Graham Potter and Brendan Rodgers sackings yesterday. I mean, Brendan Rodgers, they said it was mutual consent, but semantics, I guess. That's the 13th Premier League departure of the season. Two of which contributed by Chelsea with Tuchel and Potter, and two by Southampton as well with Hasenhüttl and Nathan Jones leaving their role. I think it gives you a little bit of an insight. I guess I think it's the most or the record for a Premier League season, I believe. I'll have to double check that. And I think it tells you a little bit about how how important it is to stay in this league, because apart from Nottingham Forest and West Ham, all the other managers at the bottom, or who have been, or all the teams fighting relegation, I should say, have parted with the manager that started the season. So I think it is something I think the Premier League and just generally, I'm not saying need to keep an eye on, but it is interesting to observe as you get these kind of foreign investors kind of pumping huge amounts of money into their club. Ayub would suggest that he could do with a bit more being pumped into Leeds, but there is this kind of flip side where as soon as it gets to a point in the season where it looks like there may well need to be a change, it seems owners or board or senior management are taking that step to really, because I think just the incentive to stay up in what is a cash-rich Premier League is more and more evident. I think you can see that. Just coming back to kind of Graham Potter, really interesting. You've got the Champions League quarterfinal. 2 of the 8 teams have parted ways with their manager, with Bayern Munich getting rid of Nagelsmann. You've got Graham Potter being got rid of before arguably, well, both teams before their biggest games of the season. But I'm with you. I think if you look at his current results, of course, I think many Chelsea fans will probably say in terms of how he's been performing, -1 goal difference, 29 goals scored this season. Just to put it into context, Arsenal have scored 70, Man City have scored 71, and that's the level. That's the caliber of teams that they obviously want to be competing against. They've scored, I think, 21 goals in 22 league games. It seems like the general opinion of most Chelsea fans in terms of what you read is that they wanted him gone. But I'm with you. There's nothing on his CV that tells you that he's that type of manager. If you look at Swansea, if you look at Brighton, if you look at Ostersund, he's been a project type manager. He goes in. If you look at what some of the senior pros say, Steve Sidwell, Adam Lallana, they talk about how he's got fantastic kind of his psychology in terms of his reaction, interaction with the managers is superb. With the players, I should say, is superb. Players really do think highly of him, and it does take him time. And it felt like when Chelsea appointed him that's exactly what he was going to get, because you're right, it's not a natural fit, you would say, in terms of what he normally would do at a football club and what Chelsea are about, at least their recent history is about. And just before I pass off to yourself, Ayub, there was a really interesting tidbit where he gave an interview to the Daily Mail, I think it was in the summer, when he was still Brighton coach, and he was talking about what a prospective next job could look like for him. And he spoke about how the next club would have to understand his journey and what the type of coach that he is, and that it would make no sense for him to join a club, and he says this quote unquote, for him to be a different manager to the one he'd been to that point. And that's why it just felt like such a, as Badge says, an unnatural fit. And I think the other last point I would say, just to finish off, is, and I think we discussed this offline as well, where I think start of the season, you would imagine that he was in quite a cushy position at Brighton. Not only was his stock incredibly high, but depending on the outcome of the World Cup in November 2022, well, December 2022, it was likely that Gareth Southgate, that could have been his fight, his last tournament. And even with England finishing off in the quarterfinals and losing to France, there was still some talk that Southgate would leave. And I think there was a thought process, perhaps I imagine, in kind of Graham Potter's mind, that if I stand pat at Brighton and I continue to pick up the results that I've been picking up, he was pretty much the leading candidate if Gareth Southgate moved on. So yeah, Chelsea come in for him after the Tuchel sacking. Of course, it's difficult to say no to that type of job. It never happens. And I think that's where we parted ways, Badge, when we had the conversation, that it's just difficult for English managers to kind of give up an opportunity to manage a top 6 club. So I'm with you. I think he'll be back. I think it was just a case of the right man, but perhaps at the wrong club, perhaps at the wrong time as well.
Yeah. Ayub, I think for you, the Brendan Rodgers sacking may be of greater interest, given they're in the mix with you down there in the relegation dogfight. So what are your thoughts on that?
Initially surprised. I think surprised because of when it's happened. I think it's not been going right for a number of months. There's something not quite right, which is strange. It really is bizarre because, I mean, as a coach, he's quite an exceptional coach. By all accounts, he's a coach with a reasonably proven track record. He's well respected by players. I think players always talk highly of him. He's very, very supportive of players as well. So in a sense, he's ticking every single box, but somehow something's not quite happened, whether it's recruitment, whether maybe it's gone stale. I think maybe there is a time where managers, if they've got the same style of management, perhaps it comes to a point where perhaps there isn't anything else that he can do. So somewhere along the line, something's gone wrong. I'm surprised by the timing of that. I've got to say, I did not expect. I think if they were going to do a sacking, it would have happened a little bit earlier. As to who they're bringing now, I've absolutely no idea. It's interesting though. So where do they go from here now? For me, my concern as a Leeds fan is, are they going to have that new manager effect? Obviously, Crystal Palace, first game they didn't. Certainly the second game they did. So my concern as a Leeds fan is I'm just thinking, oh, I hope they don't have that effect. But it had to happen because I don't think it was working. I think against the last game that they played, they were absolutely played off the park. I don't think it was going to change. So the right decision, but it just surprised me by the timing of it.
I think the owners made a point as well that they were kind of losing their faith in him because I mean, Leicester fans chime in and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure they didn't back him as much in this window as well. There wasn't that many funds for him to go and sign anyone. In recent years, their recruitment hasn't been too bad, but if I recall correctly, they didn't have much money to spend this summer, and you can tell that there was nothing. There's no spirit in that squad left, and that's why they are where they are. I believe the 19th in the table, or I think if I'm not mistaken, they're a point out away from getting out of relegation zone. But we know how.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on the recruitment. I mean, it was the Leeds, the chairman of Leeds actually said that he wants to follow the Leicester model, picking up lots of quality players. The scouting has to be exceptional, which it was. They picked up quality players. Mahrez, they picked up for peanuts, I think it was. Mm-hmm. Sold him for an incredible fortune, but he obviously did a job at Leicester as well. So it's a club that I think not only has it stagnated, it's going backwards. I hope it continues to go backwards until the end of the season. But the right decision, as I said, the only thing I would say is that it surprised me by the timing. But just on Potter, I mean, I'm not going to add too much to what you've said because I think you've covered all the angles with Potter. But there are some coaches that I think just are not designed for teams like Chelsea. It's a different animal, Chelsea. I think it was always touched on it, and he's right, absolutely right. You can't turn it down. It's a gig that you can't turn down. But I listened to an interview that I think John Terry did, and about Mourinho when Mourinho came in. He says that within no time at all, you knew he was the boss. He was a man with a clear vision, clear idea, how to treat people, and you knew that this man was the boss. I'm not sure whether Potter is that type of coach. Maybe his destiny is always to manage maybe mid-table sides rather than sides at the very top end.
But I think
that Chelsea team, to be fair, had a lot bigger personalities when Mourinho came in. I think this group of players can still be molded into whatever a coach wants them to be molded into, but it's more so he's the kind of manager that he needs time to implement his methods. And like I said, their signings were wild. They were just signing anyone and everyone. Like even the players they missed out on, the players other teams have eventually signed, but didn't seem to be any strategy there. So for him, it was just never a good fit.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Ayub, but I think there are some differences. You've got Mourinho coming in from Inter Milan after having won the Champions League. He'd already had kind of success at Porto, obviously at Inter Milan as well. I think he went from Inter Milan to Chelsea the first time round. Porto directly to Chelsea, apologies. But he'd won the Champions League at Porto. He'd obviously won the domestic title. So he's come in with a certain sense of, and remember, he was pretty much, the most sought after coach. There was a little bit of rumours about Liverpool at the time as well, but I think they didn't quite have the fundings because I think they were had the previous American ownership. But I'm with you. But then there has to be, the only question or the pushback I would give is there has to be some accountability for those who are appointing him. They appointed him knowing the type of manager he is, the type of coach he is, that he gets in. It takes him a little bit of time. He builds a certain playing style, a certain philosophy. So I'm with you that he may well be a certain type of manager, and that's the point. He doesn't have it on his CV to come in and kind of have this kind of instant effect. Even at Brighton, it took him time where the fans used to get on his back a little bit because they used to play pretty football from, let's say, box to box, but then that final third, which is often the difficulty for a lot of teams down there. Just a few comments on Rodgers, though, if I can just kind of switch across. You're right. I think both of you touched on recruitment, and it's absolutely right. Last summer, if you remember, they sold Wesley Fofana to Chelsea kind of last day of the transfer window. They only really bought Wout Faes, the Belgian defender, as well as some reserve goalkeeper Alex Smithies. And at that point, it was quite evident that they didn't really back him in the summer at all. That became evident, I think, not so long ago when they reported 92.5 million record losses for the year. So you can tell where some of the backdrop is to that lack of investment. And they invested a little bit more in January to get Suter in from Stoke, Tete in from Shakhtar Donetsk, and Christensen, I think, from Copenhagen. But in the end, I think they got 8 points off a possible 39. Their record since the World Cup wasn't great. And I think, although I hear you when you say about the timing, Ayub, I think if you look at some of the fixtures that they've got coming up, they are playing 5 teams in and around them fighting for relegation, as well as games against Villa and Fulham, which they will fancy getting something perhaps from those games. And I think they looked at it in terms of going into that running and said, well, we either do it now and we give ourselves some shot in the arm to perhaps get out of this mess, or kind of ride it out with Rodgers. And I do think that there was a certain lack of inspiration. Shearer mentioned it on Match of the Day where he spoke about it not potentially being a happy camp. You alluded to it there, Ayub, as well. I think just one final comment on Rodgers. I do think there are times, I think he's had this kind of bad rap of not being able to see the job through. You had the situation in 2014-15 with Liverpool. Obviously, that was a great run, just got pipped by City at the end. But 2 fifth place finishes for Leicester. Yes, got pipped to Champions League football both times last game of the season, as well as an FA Cup trophy, beating Chelsea in the final. I think you're talking about a top-class manager, and I think, again, similar to Potter, I do think it won't be too long before he gets a job at a decent club, I would say.
Yeah. Funnily enough, one of the names touted to take over at Leicester City, Graham Potter.
Yeah, you got potentially Nagelsmann going to Chelsea. You've got Tuchel, who's the previous Chelsea manager, going to Bayern. Yeah, it's a bit of a merry-go-round. Yeah.
Yeah. Switching from the sackings to the weekend results. Now, we've got to start with Arsenal and Leeds. Arsenal being Lewis's team, Leeds being Ayub's team. What are feelings coming out of that game, Jed? How do you think the match went? What do you think of the decision, especially you, Ayub, given the lineup that Leeds started off with, given the injuries, of course? Yeah, I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say about this. And the ramifications of relegation for Leeds and the teams around them as well.
Yeah, I mean, I called it last in the last podcast that we did that we're going to get smashed. I mean, I never for 1 minute expected that we were going to get a result. So that's not the surprise. Initially, I think when the news came out of the lineup, not just myself, but many Leeds fans were quite shocked. We didn't have Rodrigo, who was fit, but he was on the bench. Same with Bamford. But in a sense, afterwards, I actually applauded Grazia for doing this because we were always critical as Leeds fans. Bielsa was a one-trick pony, albeit when he was successful, it was a very, very successful trick. But it was only one way of playing. Same with Marsh to a lesser extent, but even he was quite committed to a certain style of play. What Grazia has done in the 5 games that he's been at Leeds is he is aware of the opposition. He tries to have a formation and a lineup to cope with the opposition. For 30 minutes, it worked. But this is the problem. For a system to work such as that, you need to have the quality, or at least you need decent players with brains. This is the problem with Leeds. We've got a handful of players who are just brainless. I'm going to mention Ayling. If you had said to me, right, there's been a penalty at the Emirates, somebody's tripped in the box, who do you think their culprit is? Without a shadow of a doubt, I'm not a betting man. But I would have put my houses on. It would have been Ayling. And it was Ayling. It was so infuriating. We'd done such a good job to hold Arsenal. We'd had a couple of half chances, or even, to be honest, really, it was more than a half chance. I think Somerville, a better player if we have Jesus, that's a goal. But it's just, I can't put into words the fury, the rage that I had with Ayling. As a defender, you've got to be switched on. He goes to ground, sticks a leg out. It's a very soft penalty, but it's
Bit of a
contact.
dive. Bit of
It's
a dive.
contact, but it's contact.
It's contact.
Jesus is a smart player. That's the first goal. Half time, it's 1-0. Second half, you'd expect that Grazia obviously has worked on the players, keep it tight, keep it solid, keep the shape. Within 2 minutes, Harrison, he goes to sleep. White ghosts in 2-0 and game over. And this is the frustration. I expected us to lose, but I expected us to have a little bit more fight because the problem is, it's all well and good saying, well, it's a free hit. It's a game we're expected to lose. But where do you think Ayling's confidence is now going into 2 massive games, Tuesday and at the weekend? He's obviously not just made one mistake, he made numerous mistakes. Other players as well made numerous mistakes. I'm annoyed, I'm frustrated because I expected a little bit more fight. After 2-0, we sort of almost gave up the ghost. We did score a consolation, but really, in no time at all, Xhaka scored, make it 4-1. So in the end, it was a very, very comfortable victory. Expected a little bit more heart, a little bit more fight. So disappointed. OS, I presume you're completely polar opposite to how I'm feeling.
Well, that's quite a mellow reaction. You well put.
I know, yeah. A bit more heat.
I'm trying to build up the viewers at the moment, so I thought
just get into it.
Yeah, once we've got a lot of viewers, then I'll go berserk.
No, I think in terms of the game itself, you've covered it to a T there. What I would say is that I mean we finished off the last episode when I said I thought the game at the Emirates would be quite a tight affair, and yes, both of you suggested that Arsenal.
You're off your rocker.
No, well, hang on. I was going to suggest that I feel like all three of us were right because it was tight for a little while, and Leeds definitely started well. Like you said, the first 30 minutes, opportunities for Christensen. They've obviously worked. They've seen obviously what Bournemouth did in terms of causing us an issue with that. Causing Arsenal with an issue with that kind of start from the kickoff, especially targeting kind of that left-hand side with Zinchenko. Got an opportunity from there. Good, like you mentioned, good opportunities for Somerville. That's a really, I mean, from just inside the box, you've played a lovely one too. You expected a better effort than that. Obviously, it's come off his foot.
He's got to score. He's got to score.
Yeah, he's got to work the keeper a little bit more strongly than it's kind of hit his instep. Similar to that Mudryk chance against Villa, if you saw the game, just not quite caught it as well as he should have. But yeah, I mean, and then the opportunity for Harrison, and they played really well. And I think what Leeds have, which is one of the reasons why I think going forward I still fancy them to be okay, is that they look lively, they look like they are threatening. They look like they could have scored the opening goal at the Emirates, and it's the old cliche, but it's a totally different game. I am with you though. Individual errors, it's a cliche again, but it's causing them an issue. Ayling with the first penalty. I mean, Jesus can do that to a lot of players. He's one of the strikers that does. He feints really well. He chops things onto his left foot, and he worked that situation quite well. I mean, Badge suggests that it's a dive. Yeah, I think he's made the most of it with this contact for sure. But yeah, I mean, Ayling again for the second goal, you side on against Martinelli. You've got to be stronger than that. You're right. Harrison slightly falling asleep, but I guess White's got a little bit of the run on him. But I'd still say Ayling's got to do much better. You've got to stop it at source.
Oh yeah.
And then similar for the fourth goal where you're playing Xhaka on side, you've got to be up with your line. If you look at Ayling's form ever since the knee injury, he's not been back to what he was once. He struggled in the last away game against Podence as well on that side where, you know, I think he struggles with tricky players, kind of quick feet and speed around him. But yeah, I think on the whole, from a Leeds perspective, and perhaps not as pessimistic as you are, I think, yeah, once they got the first goal, Arsenal, they then, I guess, relatively speaking, saw the game out. But there's enough there, I still believe, looking at it through my eyes, that Leeds have got enough to threaten offensively, but of course it's the individual mistakes. And even one small comment, you had a situation with the goalkeeper against Wolves, which cost them a goal with Johnny lobbing him in. And the very next away game, he nearly does the same thing again with Martinelli kind of nearly scoring into an empty net. And it's little things like that where you think, are we learning? Are we putting some of those kind of schoolboy errors to bed? And you're right, that would be the worry for me with Leeds. They do have a tendency to just make some kamikaze errors. But big game, obviously tomorrow, which we'll come on to. But I think on the whole, they played okay at the Emirates, I would say, and I think 4-1 flattered Arsenal a little bit.
It's a 90-minute game. We played okay for 30 minutes, and that is the problem. We've got too many mistakes, and in the Premier League, mistakes are costly, and that's what's really happening. Every time we make a mistake, it ends up either being a penalty or a goal. So that's my concern. I think there's some decent players at Leeds, but it's the Premier League. You expect decent players in the Premier League, so that shouldn't be a surprise.
It's what I would say is, I know it's Arsenal, and your season's not going to be judged by whether you win at the Emirates or lose at the Emirates. But at the same time, I think with results going Palace's way and Bournemouth's way, it hurts that bit more. Because now, literally, you're a point off. You're a point off relegation. Do you think you'll stay?
Just before you answer.
Go on.
Well, let answer.
No, just before you answer, you told me 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago that if you beat Wolves away from home, you will stay up. And if you don't,
I did say that.
You will get relegated. I'll let you answer. I will let you answer now.
Yeah, as you know, my emotions are up, emotions are down. What I say this week may be different next week. It's very much emotion led. So, at this moment in time, I think the next 2 games are huge. They will define our season. Bournemouth, we actually said last week, or in the last podcast, we talked about who's going to go down. We all sort of said Bournemouth. I changed my mind. Because I actually just thought about it. I thought against Man City, they got beat 4-0, but they played pretty well, and it's Man City. They beat Liverpool. In between, they had the Arsenal game as well, where they were winning 2-0, and it was daylight robbery. In the end, it was a harsh result. This game against Fulham as well, albeit they benefited from Mitrovic and Willian not playing. But again, being a goal down and then pulling 2 goals back, I think there's enough character. When I've watched them play, there's characters in there. There's strong fighters in there. I think they've got enough.
Yeah.
I think, seriously, I still think that we are in big trouble. We're in big trouble. I don't think we've got the characters. We haven't got the strength of character.
Yeah, I think just before you go, Badge, I think it's a very good point on Bournemouth.
He's not going anywhere. You keep saying that.
He's staying. But Bournemouth, you're right. I mean, they are competing well. They had that huge result against Liverpool, which really kind of gave them a right boost. And you're right. They could have, should have won. Arsenal could have at least got a point, 97th minute. Winner by Nelson. But against Fulham, you're right. Although Willian and Mitrovic were missing, Fulham were all over them for the first half for the most part. But Robinson had that lovely strike to potentially make it 2-0, and then it definitely would have been a different game. But you're right, they compete, they fight, they scrap, some real quality as well. I think Gary O'Neill deserves quite a bit of credit, made 2 good substitutions with the Tavernier and I think it was Christie we brought on, both contributing. I mean, if you've not seen the Tavernier goal, that was a superb strike into the top corner. But you're right, and I think they've given themselves the right opportunity. And we ended the last podcast talking about how if teams could just pick up a couple of wins in a row, and they've now got, I think, Brighton at home tomorrow or Wednesday. And I think that gives them a right opportunity. Brighton look lively going forward, but also conceding a fair few at the back. So if they manage to pick up another result, that could put them in a great space.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose in terms of the teams at the bottom, Forest and Wolves 1-1. That, I mean, I was wishing for a draw. It happened. And Wolves aren't playing that well at all. I think Wolves are perhaps, I mean, we obviously, I mean, I've spoken to Wolves fans. They are concerned. They are very, very worried. So I think Wolves, perhaps, I did think they had too much quality, but maybe it's just something not quite happening.
There's a lack of goals there.
Yeah. So Wolves, definitely in the mix. Forest, I mean, I'm not going to say anything because we're playing them tomorrow, so I don't want to tempt fate. So
wait, where is it? Home or away?
We're playing home.
Yeah,
we're playing home. Crystal Palace, I think the performance unbelievable. 31 attempts on goal, complete transformation. So they should be okay. And as we speak, it is 6:35 on a Monday. Everton are playing in about an hour and a half's time. So fingers crossed.
Come on, Everton.
How dare you? How dare you?
Hey,
I
can't
was
have Spurs
I
winning.
was going to say pray, but I think obviously nobody was listening.
You've used up you've used up that one already.
Yeah. So now it's fingers crossed. So I'm hoping that at best Everton get a draw. So really, I'm from a Leeds point of view, obviously it's a Tottenham win I want, but I'll take a draw.
Final word on Leeds would be, I think the Arsenal game was always seen, I won't use the word free hit for fear of upsetting you, but I think it was always seen as a game where if you simply just jotted down where could we get points, that's one you'd have said, okay, if we get anything, we've done well there. And I think you've picked up 3 points from Wolves away, Arsenal away. That's the way I look at it. It's like you said, these next few games had always been identified as the games, and they're going to have to pick up a win or two. And if they do, they'll be fairly clear, I would say. But huge game tomorrow. Luckily for yourselves, obviously Forest didn't quite manage to get over the line against Wolves. But yeah, all to play for.
It's a massive game, and the problem is, I mean, Grazia's quite. I mean, he plays his cards very close to his chest, so sometimes you don't always know what the situation is. But Nonto, I think, and Boba are still injured, which are crucial players for us. So really, going into 2 games of such magnitude to have those 2 players missing, I'm worried. I'm seriously worried.
I also think I need a check on this pronunciation. Is Grazia right?
Yes.
I think Grazia is the correct pronunciation.
Yeah.
Just checking. I wasn't sure, you see.
Stay in your lane.
Well, Ayub also said that Bournemouth lost 4-0 at Man City, and I'm thinking, I'm sure they scored a consolation goal at the end.
Did they score?
That goal might come in handy when it comes.
Oh
to
yeah,
goal
they
difference,
did actually.
but,
Yeah. I
just checking. You know, just checking. But yeah,
facts is never my strong suit.
Emotion is though.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
But yeah, it was a huge win for Arsenal, given what happened early in the day at the Etihad. I was going to call it the Emirates. At the Etihad, Man City absolutely played Liverpool off the park. Liverpool again took the lead in the game, which they've done in the last few, to be fair, and they just can't hold on. Their midfield and defense just gets overrun, and Man City ended up having way too much quality for them. Uwais given Arsenal your boys, and it was a great win for them, given they had to keep up the momentum after City won again, and they look like they've got their groove back, to be honest. So I was just keen to hear your thoughts on that, and how you think City are heading into this run-in.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Badge. That was the key kind of point for me watching that game, in terms of how good City looked early on in the season. If you watched all of Man City's games, I'm sure if you've spoke to many Man City supporters, they had a lot of games where they were scratchy, kind of relying on individual brilliance, whether it was from Haaland or other sources. They had slightly inconsistent team selection as well, but they had a lot of difficult situations and games. If you remember early on in the season, losing at 2-0 at home to Palace, they turned that around. I think they were 1-1 with 10 men, with Cancelo getting sent off home to Fulham. They managed to pull that around. Losing 2-0 at home to Spurs, they managed to pull that around, turn that around. Drawing at home to Everton, home to Brentford, 3-1 at St James's, they were losing, they managed to pull. So they had a lot of games where they weren't as much in control. And if you just look at the last 7 games, they've scored 27 goals. That's the last 7 games in all competitions. 27 goals, conceded 2. They are playing superb football, the kind of football that you expect from Man City in terms of years gone by, that kind of consistent flow through the thirds, really picking teams off, forcing teams into really uncomfortable situations, which you saw kind of on Saturday afternoon as well. But yeah, they look superb. I think they definitely hit that groove. They are favourites for me now for the Champions League, which at times I really questioned whether or not how it would work. But I think even in that quartet with Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, Chelsea, and that side of the draw, I think for me, for now, from what I've seen, they are the favourites, at least from that side of the draw. Marginal, but favourites nonetheless. Yeah, I think they'll take some stopping, even in the league. And if they play like that at the Etihad in 2-3 weeks' time as well, that they'll take some stopping. The only thing I would say about the game is, to your point about Liverpool as well, Badge, I'm sure we'll talk about them at length some other time, but they are definitely at the moment really caught between styles. They want to kind of keep playing the way they've always played, which is kind of to press. But to your point, they lack the energy, the legs. I mean, we're not telling Liverpool fans anything that they don't already know, and that's why I was quite surprised with how they approached the game. Say, for example, you look at the first goal from Liverpool. It's like, on the one hand, you've got this brilliance of Arnold. If you watch the first goal again from Salah, the moment he receives that ball from Fabinho, it's like a touch set ping, and he does it all in one motion. If he wastes even a split second, Jota's going to be offside. And that's the brilliance of what we think about him in terms of his offensive genius. I think no one can dispute that his right foot is a thing of beauty. But then you think back to, let's say, the 2-1 goal, where you think you've got Edison with the ball and he's pressing Ake, and they're playing a back four. So I'm thinking, why? It's clearly a tactic, but why are they pressing Ake? And he tries to rescue a situation from a Fabinho header, and he presses him. Ake, bang, straight into Grealish, into Alvarez, into Mahrez, into De Bruyne. It's an empty nets. And if you look at all 4 of Man City's goals, Alvarez sliding in 6 yards out, empty nets. De Bruyne sliding in 6 yards out, empty nets. Gundogan offers block on the line. He just needs to lift it past Arnold's shoulder. Grealish sliding in 7 yards out, pretty much just the keeper to be. They're the type of goals that tell you, A, offensively, City are clicking, because you're getting in behind, you're working through the thirds effectively, but also from a Liverpool perspective, gaps everywhere, teams with runners in behind, empty nets. You expect so much more. Again, we'll probably cover Liverpool in future episodes, but City on the whole look vibrant, look deadly, and look very much back to their kind of best form from perhaps previous seasons, and they'll take some stopping in all competitions.
Agreed. I think the way they're playing, they've got their groove back. Goals are flowing. I mean, Arsenal, they don't look like they're slipping up anytime soon, to be fair to them. But if they do, you best believe City are going to be hot on their heels, and they will capitalise. They will capitalise on any slip up by Arsenal going forward. Going to the top 4 battle, which sadly is a battle now for United fans. It all but seemed like we were safe in third. However, some of our results after the cup final win have been really poor. Newcastle, credit to them. They dominated from start to finish. Absolutely played us off the park at times. And we were hanging on. United were hanging on for a lot of that match, especially up until the first goal. Half time, it was very lucky that United were only were level. To be fair, Newcastle created so many chances, and they were constantly applying pressure. From a United standpoint, that is literally one of the worst performances this season, and that's not me exaggerating or anything as such. Just the man, there was no fight, there was no quality, there was not even any moments of anything that resembled some good football. We didn't create anything. And to be fair, the players seem like they're on a hangover since winning that cup. I don't think we've scored in our last three Premier League games, which is complete contrast to the team we were becoming up until that final. I do believe Ten Hag got some decisions wrong yesterday as well, with McTominay playing further forward. I get the logic of trying to nullify Bruno Guimaraes and having McTominay press further up the field with Weghorst, but it didn't pay off, and the players have been lackluster, to say the least. Rashford didn't seem like himself either. Bruno wasn't on it, albeit he gets shifted around quite a lot, given our injuries at the moment. It was just a poor performance, really, really poor, devoid of any kind of quality. And honestly, it hopefully kicks them in the backside. Nearly cost. Hopefully, kicks them in the backside and makes them up their game because they are now finding themselves in a top 4 battle, which at one point it seemed like it would be the case, but now Newcastle have overtaken them into third, and Spurs are playing tonight. Spurs have still played games more than United, but at this point in time, points on the board matter more than games in hand. So if Spurs manage to get a result today, that's United down into 5th. So it's all of a sudden looking not gloomy, but it's not as secure as one would hope. I've seen some ridiculous calls from some United fans on Twitter. I mean, it's to be expected about Eric Ten Hag.
Suggesting what?
I don't even want to say it because it's so stupid, so stupid. But
was it as stupid as somebody ringing into Talk Sport and telling Gabby Agbonlahor that they wanted Jurgen Klopp sacked and bringing in Daniel Farke?
Something to that degree.
Okay.
Yeah, something to that degree.
Okay.
With all due respect to Daniel Farke.
Of course.
But yeah, he's the right man. Absolutely, there's no doubt. It's not even a conversation. But the players need to pick up and get back to where they were because there's still trophies to play for, and we have to secure that top 4 spot.
So what are your first world problems? My goodness me.
First world problems. Yeah.
I'm in the gutter with Leeds.
Hey, if Leeds were, if it was Man United you supported, I'm sure you'd feel
absolutely. No, I agree. There has to be an expectation.
And I will say there is this whole notion of all these pundits going around saying without Weghorst is not good enough for United, like it's some breaking news that no one knew. Like there's a reason we signed him on a loan and we got him for 3 million as a fee to get him out of his success contract. He isn't the caliber of striker United need. However, there was going to be no backing to buy a striker to the caliber of which we require. So therefore, we brought in Wout Weghorst. And to be fair to him, his application can never be faulted. Yes, he doesn't have the quality in certain areas, especially in the final third when you need someone to step up and make things happen. He isn't that guy. But at the same time, I don't know why every week there's this notion about he's not good enough. Like we all know his capabilities and we all know why he's here. So it's a bit of a strange one that they keep having that song and dance over him. But
yeah, just on that badge. You're right. Newcastle played United off the park and deserved to win, arguably maybe even a more handsome victory than just 2-0. The only things I would add there is, you've got Isaac. If you remember, we spoke after the Carabao Cup final, and I did suggest that, and I was surprised at the time that Eddie Howe started Callum Wilson in that final. I think a big game, you're going up against a superior team in the end, right? United at that time was still favourites, right, going into that game. I was surprised he didn't start with Isaac. He played. He came on in the second half and looked lively, and now it's pretty much his spot to lose. Yes, Callum Wilson came on and scored, but Isaac definitely gives them something different in terms of that quality, the ability, his first touch, his control, some of his link up. It was superb. I think he gave Varane and Martinez quite a difficult game yesterday. It just in terms of United, the challenges, as was articulated yesterday on the program, what is pretty much their form away from home. They've got the best record at home in terms of goals conceded, 8. They've conceded 29 goals away from home. The only teams to have conceded more goals away from home, cover your ears, Ayub, are Leeds, Leicester, Bournemouth, and Forest. Not the kind of company you want to be keeping, I guess, if you want to be kind of fighting for things at the very top. And look, +4 goal difference, that's not the Manchester United way. But what I would say is it's clear, in terms of providing a reasoned judgment, it's clear that they're making progress this year. They're making big strides in the cup competitions. They've made even huge strides in their kind of philosophy, in the way they play, their identity. Of course, there's still a few positions short in terms of addressing that in the summer, most likely. There's no doubt up front. You touched on it, and I'm with you with about Weghorst. You know what you're getting. I don't think you can be too harsh on the player himself. Ultimately, I think at the time it seemed like the Glazers didn't really want to kind of push the ball out for a striker or get someone who'd be adequate. He managed to get in Weghorst, and I think he serves a purpose. But of course, there are limitations to his game, which comes to the fore in certain situations. But in the end, I think the worrying thing, I think at times for United would be you've got situations at Anfield, you've got situations yesterday where although they've not had a pasting yesterday at St James, it was on the whole from a performance perspective, and there are times in the games, especially at Anfield, where you want them to kind of not let go of that rope and just kind of compete and battle, and yet everything seems to kind of fall apart. You had that early on the season, and you thought that was a thing of the past. But you've still had a few kind of recent games where you're thinking we need to be much better. And I think, look, Casemiro's absence, it's his third suspension of the season. It's difficult to be too sympathetic, although those are all individual.
Ridiculous decisions, by the way.
I was going to, well, true, but it was his reckless action against Palace which ruled him out against Arsenal and things like that. I'm saying there's some responsibility on the player himself. That's all I would say. And look, in the end, United are going places. They are making progress. But when you hear Luke Shaw and the coach speak about the other team simply just having more desire, more spirit, more commitment, and that's why they won, I think that tells you everything. One final point. You're right about the substitutions. I think Ten Hag has received quite a lot of compliments and praise in terms of his in-game management. And I agree. On the whole, definitely so. But I think that's been very much in terms of some of the things that we would see in terms of these are the steps, these are the subs I would make now, this is the lineup I would pick. That's kind of, he's been kind of adhering to that quite a bit in terms of situations where he's had to perhaps correct situations or when the team's under the cosh. Like clearly yesterday, halftime was an opportunity where he could have thought, right, I need to make some changes. And he made a slight kind of positional shift in the middle of the park. I think those are situations where perhaps over time, of course, he'll continue to improve. At the end, of course, removing a lot of that height, it was telling that in the 88th minute, instead of Newcastle playing around the corner flag, they did what they should have done, which is to put the ball in the box, given that lack of height at the United backline, and they get a second goal from it. So that was quite telling. But on the whole, I think United, they need to put that one to bed quite quickly. And I think if they don't pick up 3 points against Brentford, I think they play them on Wednesday. I think then some alarm bells will be ringing in terms of making sure that they can secure fourth. The thing I would say, though, is I think the other teams are not kind of... Newcastle looked great yesterday, but I would say they'll pretty much be fighting for those spots regardless of what happens on Wednesday up until the end anyway.
Yeah, for sure. I think the one worrying thing is I'm pretty sure we haven't got a result away to any of the top 9 clubs in the league, which is really, really bad. We've almost done a flip in the sense where under Ole we had an incredible away record and we weren't so good at home. But now we've managed to become a bit of a force at home at Old Trafford. But my goodness, our results to the top half of the table away from home have been shocking. You mentioned the goal difference. I guess half of those goals came in 2 games, which I don't need to touch on because we all recall those games.
Absolutely. No, you're right. And I think, I think on the whole, the summary is it's been a good, positive season. But they need to just continue to kind of make progress in terms of that identity and philosophy. Just before we do finish off, I did want to just get Ayub's take on some of the fixtures that are being played and just kind of want to get his firm take on what he thinks in terms of predictions. We'll save Leeds Forest till the end, but I just want to hear your thoughts because some of the other games, Bournemouth, Brighton, Leicester, Villa, West Ham, Newcastle, and I touch on those games mainly because they were kind of in and around you, some of those teams, and some of those teams picked up a victory at the weekend. Obviously, Everton, like you said, playing in an hour or so time. How do you see those games panning out in terms of predictions? But also then, if I could hold your feet to the fire with the Leeds Forest prediction.
The first one, Bournemouth, Brighton. Under normal circumstances, I think Brighton would probably have a little bit too much, but I think Bournemouth have got a tremendous amount of fight. They have got quality as well. I think there's no getting away from the fact that even though they are towards the bottom, they've got some quality. So I think it's probably a draw or a Bournemouth win. and I'm not just, I suppose, saying that. I genuinely sort of think that I think Bournemouth might just edge it. Leicester, Aston Villa. I'm hoping that Leicester is still in a state of shock and disarray. Aston Villa, fantastic result over the weekend. So I'm hoping that Villa get a result. But it's a East Midlands derby, really, isn't it? So maybe, I suppose Leicester might just kickstart their season, getting rid of Rodgers. So you never know. But I'm hoping that if it plays to form, it's a Villa win.
Credit to Emery, by the way. He's doing a fantastic job.
Quality manager.
Yeah.
Great. Exact quality manager. Plus, he's got some decent players to work with as well. So always helps. And then the main game, the big game, Leeds versus Forest.
I mean,
I
can feel you feeling like it's such a big moment for you. This
is. I mean, I think Bill Shankly. I think he was misquoted when he said, "It's not a matter of life and death football. It's more important than that." I think that's not exactly what he said, but it is a strange thing when it comes to Leeds. When I'm watching Leeds or when I'm listening to Leeds playing. Everything else doesn't matter. There is nothing else in the world apart from that result. I'm genuinely at this moment in time. I can feel, even just talking about it, my heart rate is getting faster. Tomorrow it's going to be through the roof. It's a must win. I mean, there is no. It's not up for discussion. We've got Forest tomorrow, and we've got Palace at the weekend. It's 6 points. It has to be 6 points. Whether we've got what it takes, I'm not too sure. If we lose against Forest or if we don't get a result, then I'm going to lose it. I've been reasonably calm today. I'm going to lose it. So the next podcast, I'm just going to absolutely go berserk because that to me will be unacceptable. It will just be something that I don't think we'll be able to recover from.
Badge, note to self: we may have to record on a time delay. just for your information.
I'm calling it now. Forest 3-2.
I will reserve judgment, Ayub. I just wanted to hear your thoughts. But yeah, you didn't touch on West Ham Newcastle, but I imagine you'd be hoping Newcastle.
That's on a Wednesday. Yeah, I'm hoping. Yeah, I mean Newcastle. Tremendous respect to Eddie Howe. He's done a fantastic job. They're playing some great stuff, and they are deservedly where they should be in the top half of the table, competing for a Champions League spot. And I hope that again, I'm expecting Newcastle to get a result against West Ham because West Ham are, albeit they've got some decent players, nowhere good enough in comparison to what Newcastle have. Albeit it's a West Ham home game, I'm hoping it's going to be a Newcastle win.
Wait, you don't think West Ham have as good a squad as Newcastle?
What, in terms of players?
Yeah.
No chance.
I don't agree with that.
I don't think so. I think they've got some good players.
They've got a lot of quality. They've got some
good players. I think always touched upon Isaac. I think he's sensational, absolutely sensational. I think he's a wonderful acquisition for Newcastle. Quality centre forward. How much did they pick him up for? About what, 50 million, 60 million?
They did cost a pretty penny.
But he's worth every single penny. I mean, that's good acquisition. If you're spending that sort of money, that's the type of player that you spend money on. And I think Eddie Howe's done a great job. I think he's a good coach, and I think Newcastle may just be the perfect marriage for Eddie Howe.
Well, to quote Gianni Infantino today, Jesus Christ. Sorry about that.
Jesus in the building. Make the prayers, please.
I was going to say, today I feel like a hammer. So hopefully West Ham pull through there and get a result, because United at home to Brentford does not fill me with confidence right now, even though our home form is good. Brentford they are a dangerous side, and Ivan Toney does not look like he's stopping stopping scoring anytime soon. He's having a wonderful season. Brentford as a whole, or if you look at it individually, you wouldn't think they're that great a side, but my God, they gel well as a team, and everyone does what's required of them. It'll be a tricky task. I'm sure you'll be upset with this, are you? But Pontus Jansson scoring on the weekend as well. What could have been? What could have been? He was.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
not good
gutted. I
enough.
mean, we'll maybe I suppose that's for another day, but I'm gutted with Janssen not being at Leeds because he's exactly the character that we want. We want warriors. We want guys that just will not give in until the last minute.
Yeah, no, you're right. But yeah, we'll see how everything turns out, and hopefully Leeds lose. But we will see. I'm going to see red.
I'm going to see you tomorrow.
But yeah, guys, that is as all the time we have today. Have you got anything left today to wrap up, or?
I just wanted to wish Ayub good luck for the game tomorrow, really.
And I was going to say, please pray for Leeds, but nobody ever bothers, so I'm not going to even waste my time with that.
Even the fingers aren't crossed anymore. But yeah, guys, thank you for tuning in to Just Onside. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, all that good stuff, and hit the bell for the next episode, which will be coming to you after this weekend, I guess. No, Thursday,
Friday.
Yeah, well, we'll hopefully record on Friday, so hopefully the episode can be out there on Saturday, hopefully in readiness for the weekend games.
Lovely. All right, guys. So we will see you on the next episode of Just Onside, and in the meantime, don't stray off.